You're listening to The Talent Sync, a collaborative podcast production from JobSync and the Surveil Candy Benchmark Research Program. The Talent Sync is about anything and everything recruiting and hiring. Literally the kitchen sink and how all things in talent acquisition work together, should work together, and how sometimes they don't. Now it's time to sync up with your hosts, Leah Daniels and Kevin Grossman. Today's episode is about the forever out of reach data holy grail. Enjoy the podcast. Leah, I've got more news that I need to share with you.
I love news.
The last episode, on the
Yes.
last episode of the Talent Sync,
Oh,
uh,
cue
I,
dramatic music.
the last episode of the Talent Sync, I had told you about I was going to see my favorite band,
Yes.
Rush, which
Yes.
I did.
Which
And
I might have called slow,
oh, what's that?
which I might have joked are slightly slow.
Slightly slow. What do you mean?
Well, they're slightly aged, so I don't think they're
Oh, well, they
rushing so
are.
much.
No, they're not slow. The good news, I know, that's true. No, they were jumping around on stage like they were 22, not 72. But
Love
but
that.
the but it was pretty awesome, and it was the second show of the tour in LA that my best friend from college and his son, who is also a musician, we were in the seventh row, and it was fabulous. So and now I can't wait to see him again, which is going to be in October in San Jose. But but it was an amazing show, and just to see them play again, and their new drummer Annika Niles is a phenomenal. She's a beast, just a beast. And
Love that.
for the past year, for her to learn a catalog of 40 songs, and by the way, she's someone who is she's a phenomenal drummer already. Her style is more jazz fusion rock, and but anyway, to learn this catalog in less than a year and own it on stage was a total. And they paid homage to the drummer who passed away, to Neil Peart,
Mm.
the throughout the show. Anyway, had to share that with you because that did happen and it was fabulous. And yes, they are old, but man, they can move. They were
Love
ba-
that.
they
Love
were
that.
bouncing around. And she's 43, the drummer.
She's a baby.
So she's a baby compared to them. Anyway, so but you're good. Are you enjoying your summer?
We have summer this week. I love
Yeah.
summer. It's happening. We're in the heat wave, so we're in for 100 degrees right now, which
Is
is
it
lovely because I
is it
just left a heat wave out of the UK, which was also 100 degrees every day.
I know when we went 3 years ago, we went during June and took the kids to the UK and in Ireland, and then London was having a heat wave. I think probably most of Europe at the time too. I mean, it was crazy. There's just no air conditioning in most places. I mean, we had our
Good.
hotel didn't have air, and it was. But is it sticky in Boston right now too? 100 degrees. That's super hot. So.
Yeah, it's a little sticky, but uh, we have a little more air conditioning here, and more importantly, like, because I think the problem with London is that it's a little bit of an old infrastructure. So retrofitting aircon into these old buildings makes it really difficult. Where I think we're a little more modern infrastructure here in Boston, just a couple hundred years old instead of
Yes.
1,000 years old.
Well, that's something that I had noted too, but I know that but there are some places, there are some hotels that do have air.
Yes.
And other places that have that because I know and I read somewhere again, and then we'll get into our topic du jour, that like 1,000 people have died in France because of
Yeah, it's
they've drowned. Like
oh,
kids, supposedly kids, teens, adults trying to stay cooled off have drowned.
oh, because they don't know how to swim.
Yes, that would make sense. Yes, but I mean,
Oh,
I didn't dig fully into the piece, but I'm like, wow, that's just. I mean, everybody's trying to cool off. I mean, like God. Used to when I grew up in the Central Valley of California when it was 110. We didn't have a pool. We had a swamp cooler. I don't know if you know what that is.
no.
Yeah, so it's it's basically air based, filtered air that the air is cooled because you have a vat of water in an air conditioning unit on your either on the side of the house or on the roof, and it's wet, cold air, but you have to constantly change the filters and put water in it. And
Oh,
it doesn't work when you're in a humid climate. It's got to be in a drier climate.
oh, interesting.
Anyway, and I remember growing up laying under in the hallway underneath that air, just like, and then running through the sprinklers. That's all we could do. So, okay. So, um, shift into the topic. And I'm really looking forward to learning from you today on this too. So, we've been doing the Candy Benchmark research program for 15 years now. Every single year we work with, over 100 companies, and that many of them more now especially are doing their own surveying. They have their own data. Whether they're using another platform like Surveil, and or they have their own homegrown surveying, but they all are looking at the data a little bit differently. And so, like, I've had conversations where they'll say, "Oh, well, our NPS is is 95." And I'm like, wow, that's really, really high on a 100-point scale. It's like, is that all new hires? Well, yeah, it is. Oh, but it's not rejected candidates though. And so
Right.
you start breaking it down, but then to be able to, so the thing that I've learned is that there's not this single source of truth. We've tried to be that at the candies, like that, to kind of be an industry standard, but there isn't this single source of truth about how, and companies, if their data is creating a feedback loop for themselves that is more positive than not, they want to hold on to
Yeah.
that. Right.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, and that's true.
Motivation matters in data,
Exactly.
doesn't it?
But it's still been that case year after year. So, but if we segue into systems, ATS, for
Yes.
example, when I worked at People Fluent a long time ago, in talent acquisition and talent management platforms, that I was part of the product marketing team, we were always talking about the single source of data truth. We've always
Yeah.
been talking about that. What's the here we are today, and it's still an issue. Why
Still
is
the
that?
problem. So
Why?
let's break it into a couple things. The first, so I worked in ATS as well, just like you did, but I worked at Bullhorn, and we had an internal saying that we used to tell it quietly to our clients that if it's not in Bullhorn, it's bull,
I
right? If it's not in
get
Bullhorn, it's
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
so, and that's because, first of all, you have humans involved, right? So the human in the loop for all the things with AI, we're like, put the human in the loop. Like the human in the loop with the data is part of your problem, right? It's already like they miss things, they miss steps, the data is, garbage in, garbage out, all of those things. So you've got that problem. That is a fundamental, universal problem that is going to remain a constant. But that's not the only problem, right? When we start talking to companies, and I talk to companies a lot about
Yeah.
data, and they always say,
Because this is so just real quick, I mean, for everybody keeping score at home who listens to the Talent Sync, whether they may know, but that's what you do. That is the business that you're in. You're helping to the systems to connect, right?
and yes, and connect the data.
And connect the data.
And we have the single thing I hear more than anything is my source data is hot garbage. My
Right.
source data, source
Garbage
tracking.
in, garbage out.
Source tracking is broken. Source tracking is bad. Source tracking is a problem. And you sort of dig into why. And the first thing is, well, if you ask your candidates, they're going to pick the first choice. Also, because if you ever do it yourself and you look as the candidate, 75 layers of source tracking, the candidate does not care. And so you've got a motivation problem, right? So you got a motivation problem there. But actually, you have a bigger motivation problem. So we care about source tracking as companies because you want to know where your candidates are coming from and you want to know how much you paid for all of them
Correct.
because there's a money motivator.
Yep.
Unfortunately, there's also a motivator for the companies who are generating candidates to also fill that field, and that's part of our problem. So when we talk
So
about
wait, so
systems.
hold on. Are you talking about like the one-click applying platforms out there? Is that what you're
Oh,
talking about?
no, no, I'm talking about all of them. So
Okay.
across the board, we have a
Everything.
whole everything.
Okay.
So the one-click apply platforms are actually probably your better options because
Really?
there's a point A to point B, candidate goes in, field gets filled. Easy.
Okay.
That actually is a pretty clean one. Now, there's some other parts of it that can be deceptive. So Your one-click apply platforms don't want to tell you if it's an organic applicant or if it's a sponsored one or which one of their products generated that particular applicant, because then you can interrogate that data and have an opinion on how they're performing as a provider. And so
Mhm.
they try to mask a little bit of that. So this is part of your problem is the motivation of whoever is filling in the data versus the interests of the person or company receiving the data. This is actually your data problem. So if the motivations don't align with the interests, you can
But
get deceptive data.
but let me back up for a second because if we're talking about and are you talking about the data that's captured in a job application online on
Sure.
somebody's career site?
Yep.
So if and that's another important thing that kind of a related question I wanted to ask. Why isn't that then more standard across companies around the world then, right? Because if you are
Yep.
if there are certain and we've also made it really easy for applicants, especially high volume hiring and many others too, where it can take less than even 5 minutes for just the basic info
Yep.
that you need. But why? But how does, I mean, that what the interests from a candidate's perspective is I want to get the job.
Yes.
So, but why? So why is it so varying then? If it's the same important basic pieces of information that I need as an employer and you want to share with me as a candidate, why don't those interests meet?
Oh, that's such a great question. So you have in between those two pieces, the candidate and their interest, which is to
Yeah.
get a job, and the company whose interest is to be able to evaluate, screen, and pick someone for that job.
Yes.
You have a phenomenally interesting gauntlet. So your gauntlet has lots of things that come into it. Regulation,
Sure.
legislation.
You always remind me of that. And I get that part.
Yep,
And
those things are
that's
important.
and that but is so that does vary around the world, right? I guess
100%.
by
Yep.
country too. So that's part of the causing the issue of
That
disconnect, right?
disconnect. Now keep going further. So for every company that's in a position where they would beg, borrow, plead, and steal to get people to apply for their jobs,
Yes.
right? Because they don't have huge consumer brands, for example, they're just not well known, or they have really hard roles to find people for. So for every company like that, you've got one that's on the other side, which is like, oh, for the love of goodness, everything, stop sending me more candidates. I talked
Yes.
to somebody last week who told me that they hire less than 0.1% of their applicants,
Yeah.
and they do nothing but exist to get applications
They
because they're a really well-known brand. They're a high desire brand,
sure.
and everybody under the sun applies for their jobs. And so
Sure.
they have a different gauntlet because they're trying to make that 0.1% be 0.5%. Like they're just trying to make it a little bit easier on the recruiters because they get so many applicants. So that's a big part of why the gauntlet looks different, right? So you have just what is the reality of it? And then you got one more piece, which is you have humans in your company who have really strong opinions. I heard as recently as last year a hospital say to me, well, if they really want to work here, they'll fill out whatever we ask them to fill out. And I was like, no, they don't want to really work there because they're a nurse and you actually need to compete for nurses.
Yeah.
And so let's make it easy for them. Right.
Yeah.
And so we are still in a world where there are a high level of opinions that drive what data is being asked for and collected.
Hubris abounds. Hubris
Yes.
abounds. It does, and I've heard that before as well, and I've also heard in the same breath not only that yeah, of course they want to work here. Um, we're not going to respond to everybody either. That's a whole nother
Right.
ball game. But so back to so there's so then
So good.
what I'm hearing, and you can continue to expand, of course, but
Yep.
we're never going to get there. Time for a talent sync break. The Talent Sync podcast is brought to you by JobSync and the Surveil Candy Benchmark Research Program. The Candies helps you and your organization measure and understand your overall candidate experience ratings from pre-application to onboarding. Benchmark your candidate experience today. Go to surveil.com/CANDS Candies.
Oh, but wait, there's more.
We're never going to get there.
But wait, there's more, Kevin.
Yeah.
Now, in the middle of that gauntlet, you have a third party with interest, which is your intermediaries. So that might be your career site provider.
Okay, I'm sure.
That might be your chatbot. That might be your ATS. It might be your CRM.
Yeah.
You might have your talent pool, lake, swamp, whatever you want to call it these days, which pops up and says, "Hey, give me your information." All of those have an interest, and all of them are also chasing this field that we have put into our ATS called source attribution. And everybody wants to be the source. The number one source for most companies is your career site. And I promise every single company that your career site has not generated a single candidate in their whole life. It doesn't. It is a medium.
Wait, hold on. And generate, when you say single candidate, do you mean a single qualified candidate or you mean
None.
literally?
Your career site does not generate candidates. Google generates candidates. Your brand generates candidates. Indeed or LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter
So
or whatever.
you're talking about the initial interest then
How?
because
Yes.
the physical act of applying though is my actual submission of interest, isn't it?
It is, but that is not a source. That is a medium. That
That's
is
true.
an intermediary.
Okay,
That
I
is
got it. I got
something
it.
that helps convert data. But what's happened is that you look in your source reporting, you're like chat to apply, career site, um, CRM, re-engagement email. You're like, these are not sources. These are mediums that have taken
Sure.
the various things that have actually generated cancer. This is why this is so messy. So what's happened? Well, we as an industry have put a high value on this one field in your ATS called source. We put a really high
Oh,
value on it.
super high. I know. I hear that from our companies we work with. Yes.
So
Yeah.
so if your source report is really, really important to you and it's a high value field, everybody wants it. Everybody wants it. And
Even
so
if it's not accurate,
even right,
which, right,
because like I said, your career site didn't generate any candidates, your chatbot didn't generate
right,
any candidates. It converted them. And it might do a very good job at it. In fact, it might do a better job than before. And we should measure this. This is good data. We should measure it.
sure.
But we should not measure it at the expense of the source, especially the ones that we in. And so this is where it gets super messy. Now let's make it one more complicated factor. Most companies have added in an apply with LinkedIn, apply with Indeed, apply
Yeah,
with Seek, apply with StepStone, apply with I don't care who it is, whatever. That apply with button, that also usurps source. So a candidate comes in on Indeed, they use a apply with LinkedIn, they are now LinkedIn's candidate, even though they came in through your Indeed advertising. Messy, messy, messy.
so yeah, because that wasn't, so LinkedIn becomes the source, but it really wasn't. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Right, right,
They were helping in the conversion.
right.
Again, a high value activity, an important activity, something you should be giving credit for,
So
but we don't give credit for.
why aren't we why aren't conversions something that we're tracking then, right? Because if you're, I mean, isn't that valuable to know? Because I have heard this conversation from TA leaders and teams in the past where we want to know what that path was like,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
think
Maybe we want to know the original source, but we also want to know how they still came to us along and how to connect those dots. There's a value to that, isn't it?
100%. And, I recently, as you look through things, you see certain things. And I noticed our friends at Oracle, ORC, has decided that they will also allow you to track medium as a separate field. This is great. I love this.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. Oh, good to know.
This is so good.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, if a recruiter takes an applicant from one job and applies them to a different job, like having a pull rec and a hire rec, the source is overwritten with recruiter.
Oh,
So
really? Oh,
like
wow.
so close. And part of this is again motivation. The ATS just doesn't care. This isn't a big thing for them. I mean, we can't even get them to really contemplate a good candidate experience on the apply path. Forget trying to get through the nuances of multi-layer attribution models in the ATS. And so motivation is sort of the problem in all of this is everybody's got a very different motivation. It's actually our biggest problem with candidate data right now. You asked before, like,
Mm.
what's the candidate's motivation? Well, what's the candidate's motivation to rewrite their resume to the point where it's not even truthful anymore? They want to get a job, and AI lets them do it, make it easy. So, like, we
Right.
all have these motivations.
Well,
They're all tied back. No problem.
resume application embellishment is as old as time, number one. I mean, that's not,
Yes,
but now with AI, it's actually happening more
at
and more
scale.
and more at scale. And which, yeah, so there's been and again, my experience in the space, there hasn't really been the motivation to change that, to change it from
Correct.
the ATS perspective, right?
Correct.
Which is one of the places where, again, if you're just talking about candidate data, that literally is candidate data, and that should be the place where that changes. Um, so even though you said that Oracle or ORC, their cloud, right? Their cloud recruiting
Their cloud.
cloud,
Yep.
is now added medium, but that's not really even a valid field then if they've added it because it gets overridden pretty easily. It sounds like.
Yeah, it's not being utilized properly, or because no one knows how to use it. I don't know. But I do see like we even the ATS tries to co-opt source attribution and become the source.
Sure.
So like we have now convinced an entire market that the single most important data point as a third party vendor is to own source attribution. And so that motivation alone has now caused the industry to do maybe not the best job for their clients and their companies that they work with because they are so busy trying to own that one field in your ATS. And so this is a microcosm of the data problem, but it gives you a real idea of the motivation drives so much of the reasoning behind why the data is still messy after 25 years. Like, how have we not fixed this problem yet?
So let me ask this because I know that an ongoing running recruiter joke, and maybe joke's not even the right word, but just the butt end of some of recruiting jokes always tends to be the ATS. Over time, regardless, it doesn't matter. Like I always joke that with teams, and they laugh at this. The day before you implement a new system is the day you start hating it. But
Yes.
is part of so I mean, there's a lot of pain when you're switching, and I hear this every single time. We've had a lot of companies moving from one to we're moving to
Yep.
Workday, or they're moving to Oracle, or they're moving to Success Factors, and or Smart Recruiters and Greenhouse to this and that. I mean, what's the biggest part of that pain? Is it related to the data?
So that's a really interesting question. So why are people moving ATSs? Is there's lots of reasons.
Sure.
So reason one, your CFO signed a contract
Oh
and
yeah,
they
that
threw in
part.
the
Yeah.
ATS fairly cheap, and now you have a new ATS.
Right.
Congratulations.
Right.
And that's a non-trivial part of the enterprise market moving ATSs. I say the enterprise market very specifically, right? As you go down market, a lot of the movement is around increased functionality or the belief of automation, the hope of a better process or a better alignment, right? One of the things that is super interesting about recruiting in our market is you don't actually have a one size fits all method that will just work for everyone because
Right.
how you recruit has so much to do with how you run your business. Like,
Yeah.
are you in one building and everybody comes in, or are you a retail organization and you're scattered everywhere and you've got individual decision makers hiring at the store level times 1,000? That is a different recruiting model,
It is.
swings,
Yeah.
systems, process.
Yep. Yep.
Everything is
Yep.
different,
Yep.
right? Are you a company in an acquisition swing? So every 6 months, there's a new one. You got to figure in how to fold into it.
Sure. Sure.
a whole different swing, right? So all these different, and are we keeping the brands? Are we separate? Are we all folding into one brand? Like many, many, many pieces that have so much to do with the business itself. And therefore your ATS is an extension of how do you optimally run your business through the hiring arm part of your process. Like it's an important thing to recognize, and that one ATS does not always solve for each of those different scenarios. You may actually need different systems. In fact, even in one business, you may say we need two different systems. Our corporate hiring needs to be different than our field hiring.
Which is why you do have companies, even mid-size, especially at a global enterprise, that have multiple layers of different
Yes.
of systems, maybe even more than one ATS.
Yep.
Especially if you're hiring globally. And so again,
And
I
now
I
make the data all talk to each other.
now I'm like I we just that's the holy grail. It's never I mean we're never gonna find it, right? Or are we? I mean at some point is that
I mean,
are we gonna get there? Because everything that you've outlined, from compliance considerations to complexity of organization to how candidates are converting, even I mean all of these things. No wonder it is painful also to switch systems too, right?
right. And I
Even
think most companies live in a three bear situation too, on top of it, right? So you look at your hiring practices just within any part of your business, and you're like, oh, I got a little Goldilocks situation here. I've got too much over here. I got just right there, and this is not working at all. I got nothing over here, right? And because you're trying to force everything through a standardized process, which has downstream reporting implications that are good for the business, right? Because standardization equals reporting. That's a little takeaway for everybody here.
right, right,
Um, I know, sad face, everybody. But it means you have to do very different things in front of those parts of the process
right.
in order to not drown over here, get enough candidates over there, and not mess up what's working, which is never, by the way, the biggest bucket. The biggest bucket is never the middle bucket. It's always the ones on either side.
Right, right, right. It's always the fringe, man.
Oh, killing us, but we love it. But it
So
is,
go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say that. So this is part of it. Motivation one is just that our CFO says something. The next is we have, this is an industry. It's been around for a long time. So we now have deprecating systems. Like you gotta leave Taleo eventually, guys. Sorry, it's
Brass
happening.
ring, brass ring.
No, they're holding on forever. They're called Infinite. They're gonna last forever. You
Anyway,
gotta
I
love the
don't know.
name. I like the aspiration of it. I really do. They're gonna hold on forever. I love it. Um, but but we do have these deprecating systems, right? And then you've got the businesses themselves evolving, growing, changing, outgrowing
Yeah,
systems, right? I've seen companies leave greenhouse and love it, but also have to leave it because they've actually outgrown its
sure, sure,
capabilities, right?
sure,
And
sure.
so you've got that element. So there's lots of reasons to move, but I think a lot of times we're chasing a hope and a dream of a better process, a better make the hiring managers happier. You're also in a state of are we in a business where we're trying to make the hiring managers do all the hiring, right? Or are we bringing it in and the recruiters are doing all the hiring? Like, so where is our business process and what systems can hopefully support that? And
So if you could, just as we wind down on this episode, again, always you and I always love to bite off a whole bunch of stuff, and I just but I love the conversations that we have. But what with especially based on the work that you do at JobSync, and
yeah,
just at as someone who knows how systems work together and talk together and how data should flow,
yeah.
what are like one, two to three things in that you say, okay, again, I know it's going to be depend on where you're at, what stage you're at, and all the things that we've already outlined in this conversation. But what do you recommend? Like, what should to get closer to the Holy Grail? What do we do?
I think the one of the things that is important to think about is that like I said, data has motivation. Sometimes everybody's motivation is the same thing.
No.
Last name is last name is last name is last name. I don't think we need to worry about that. But we do need to understand how our systems work.
Hmm.
And we need to recognize that at times we need to ignore the standard fields that the data that the systems want to give you and actually move into custom. I can feel every HRIS person vomiting in their mouth right now as I say that out loud. But the thing is that those standard fields everybody is focused on, and especially ones where there are third-party motivators that have interest in them.
Hmm.
So take that away so that you control what goes into which data fields. Like actually take some ownership on what's happening in the data. Because if you don't understand it, then you can't figure out why it's broken. And sometimes the only way to understand it is to remove everybody's hand out of the honey jar so that you can actually see what's going on. And that'd be my biggest recommendation
And
and the
and
thing I see
and
work the
that's
best.
that I appreciate that, and that ties to what I've always kind of known too, right? Is that implementing any new technology will fall on its face if you're not addressing the underlying processes and that are driving the data, right? And that's basically, I'm just kind of, I think, reiterating what you were just saying, under what's underneath. Like
Yeah.
you've got to be able to, before you can orchestrate a tech move or a tech upgrade or whatever that is, to better understand that. So that's good. That's great advice, Leah.
I'd say the other thing, and this is good advice in general, is that your standard tech, whatever that is going to roll out new things, new features, new
Yeah. All
functionality, new
right. Of course.
partnerships, new.
Yep. Yep.
Um, don't just accept it because they rolled it out. Look at it, use it, test it, try to break it, try to figure out where its gaps are, because that will teach you a lot about what it's doing and what's doing to your data. And, one of those things that I say that while in the back of my head, I have this thing that's happening all the time, which is AI is being rolled into everything now. So if you aren't watching what your existing vendors are doing with AI, if you're not looking at your existing contracts, you're not looking and testing every time they change something, then you're going to miss whatever is being done to your data and in your systems.
Hmm.
So have a process for new feature releases so that you can fully understand what the impact to your business and your data is going to be.
That is great advice. And Leah, on that note, I think we're gonna wrap this episode up. This was great. I always learn tons when we talk shop, especially in areas that I'm not as well versed that you are, and I totally appreciate it. And I think that's why we love having these conversations too. So thanks everybody for getting synced with us at the Talent Sync. We appreciate you listening in. And Leah, I hope that you continue to have, hopefully it cools down for you a little bit. You get a little bit more mild summer weather, right? Maybe?
Maybe next week, but this
Maybe,
week,
maybe.
5 stars.
Otherwise,
Would recommend 100 degrees.
there you go. We will see you next time on the Talent Sync. Thanks, Leah.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Talent Sync podcast, a Surveil Candy and Job Sync collaboration. More episodes soon. Subscribe to our podcast via your favorite podcast player today and stay synced with the Talent Sync.